You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin the Cleric.
And me, Brophy. And today, Roisin, we're going to be discussing the subject of pathological demand avoidance with Jeanette Delahunty of the TSK Academy. The TSK Academy works with people who may be classed as neurodiverse, and Jeanette, who's a a neurodiversity consultant and trainer, has over 20 years experience working in the field of additional needs. So, and this coming Monday, the 18th of November, Jeanette will be running a course on pathological demand avoidance. Now, for a lot of people, our viewers out there, that's probably the first time they heard of it. So, I'm really delighted to be joined here again, both myself and Roisin, by Jeanette, who's going to discuss this topic and a lot more. Jeanette, you're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup.
Thanks very much for having
Hello.
me, Paul and Roisin. It's lovely to be here.
It's lovely to
Oh,
have you
brilliant.
back, Jeanette. And do you know what? It's a topic and subject I know absolutely nothing about.
Yeah, so Jeanette, pathological demand avoidance. What exactly is that?
Pathological demand avoidance, or extreme demand avoidance, it's also known as. So PDA or EDA. So it's an anxiety-driven need to be in control at all times. In the neurodivergent community, we like to actually refer to it not as pathological demand avoidance, but as a persistent drive for autonomy. And I think it just sounds so much better when we say that because essentially that's what someone is doing. They're just trying to maintain their autonomy and keep in control of the situation all of the time. So it's an anxiety-driven need to be in control at all time, and it's linked to the autism spectrum presently.
Okay, okay, and it's as we were chatting before, on the DSM, which is the big psychological Bible that's used to diagnose various different conditions or presentations. Uh, Pathological demand avoidance at the moment it is linked to the autism spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. So the DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And then that's mainly American based, but we still use it here. And the other one then is the ICD, so the International Classification of Disease. That would be the European version. But it's essentially what the psychiatrists use and the doctors use in order to try and diagnose any kind of mental health or neurological condition. So at the moment, PDA is underneath the autism spectrum as a profile of autism.
Okay, that's very interesting. And what would be if someone had a diagnosis of PDA or pathological demand avoidance? What are the signs of it?
So we're looking at people who are really trying to avoid the demands of everyday life to an extraordinary extent. So it's not just about, I don't really feel like doing something right now. It's that physical um kind of a stop that's stopping them from engaging in something because their anxiety has gotten so high that they're not actually able to engage in the normal demands of everyday life. And when I say normal demands of everyday life, I'm talking about things that we do every single day. We get up and we get dressed and we might get our lunch ready or have our breakfast. And those demands can become so severe for somebody with a PDA profile that it's debilitating a lot of the time. It actually prevents them a lot of the time from engaging in things. So when you're asking somebody, can you help with the wash up? And you get that kind of a pushback. It's not a pushback that you'd get off somebody who's, and not what's the word I want to use? A typically developing child would give you that pushback. But somebody who's got PDA, it's that anxiety that just gets so much for them that their brain just can't cope with it. So they end up having a meltdown situation because they really struggle.
Yeah. So the simple ones, ordinary tasks that we we'd all face can become quite challenging for someone with PDA. I'm sure it can be very difficult in for children in a school environment where you have a teacher and they're giving instructions, could be like take out your books, or we're going outside to play, or um,
Yeah. So
you
it kind
can
of
take
looks
out your
then to
lunches now. Things like that can become challenging.
apologies, there was a delay on it there very
Yeah, okay,
briefly.
okay.
But, yeah, I think for teachers, really, they're looking out for that heightened anxiety in somebody, that stress, and that avoidance more than what would happen with a typically developing child. So they're looking at that pushback that a little bit more, that is more extreme, that they seem to be avoiding things, and just the stress and anxiety really is part and parcel of it, not actually being able to engage in doing something. And more frequent meltdown situations and things like that where they're just not coping.
And Jeanette, I'm just thinking, Paul mentioned a classroom environment. Then even there must be anxiety if a teacher asks them a question.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's another demand. We really don't think about the amount of demands that we place on people every single day. And when you just take a really small example of getting out of bed in the morning, right? Just a very, very small example. So there's different types of demands that we have every day. So one of them would be direct demands. So that's us telling somebody what to do or asking somebody a question. Get up, get dressed, get your uniform on, get your school books, get your bag, get your breakfast, put your stuff in the dishwasher, clean up after yourself, walk the dog. That's a lot of demands first thing in the morning, do you know? So, and then we have what we call indirect demands. So, indirect demands is all to do with the transitions and the social norms, fitting in with society, understanding rules and regulations, things like that, that they're impacting you, but nobody's telling you directly to do them. Okay, but you still have to abide by them. And then you have something called self-imposed demands. So those are the demands that we place on ourselves. So your stomach is rumbling, you need to eat, you're feeling hungry, and now the demand has become so much for them that they might not be able to physically eat because now they know that they have to eat. So there's little things like that. So just go back to the getting out of bed example. Okay, so you're getting out of bed in the morning, your alarm goes off. There's an indirect demand. Okay, your parent knocks on the door. There's an indirect demand. Your parent then tells you to get up. There's a direct demand. And then the thought of, oh my goodness, I have to get up now because the alarm is going off is a self-imposed demand. That's four demands in just one situation. So you think about that, on a morning before the child has even gone to school, we're looking at least, at the very least, 30 demands before a child has even got out the door. Now, a
Well,
typically developing child is going to be able to cope with that quite easily. But if you have a PDA profile, that's an awful lot. And then we're expecting them to get into school and stay calm. They've already had a mountain of stress that morning, getting them as far as the school gates, never mind anything else. And, it's a huge thing. That anxiety is absolutely huge in them.
And if a parent was listening to this now, what is maybe would the maybe three advice pieces of advice that you would give to a parent listening to this now before to help their children before they even get to school in the morning?
Reduce the demands would be one of the biggest things to do. Reduce the demands. Stay calm. Something we often forget because of our culture and our history, we automatically presume that kids are just being defiant and they're being bold, being naughty, whereas they're not. They physically can't do it. So, that fight and choose your battles. No, choose your battles, stay calm, choose your battles and reduce the demands. And like if we reduce the demands, that's the three top tips. I suppose the next most important one is make sure there's choices, that that person is still in control of the situation. So, an alarm going off, we know we have to get out of bed. So do you want to get out of bed now or do you want to get out of bed in 5 minutes? You've just put that control back in that child's hands. They know they have to get up. but you've taken that demand element out of it by telling them what to do, and you've given them an option of how they want to be in control of their own life. So it's something so small. A young child I used to work with there in a preschool he'd really struggle with putting his shoes on. He had big sensory issues along with everything else, and he didn't like to wear his shoes. And instead of saying, "Come on, get your shoes on, we're going outside," there's like three demands just in that sentence. We would say, "We're going to be going outside, but what do we need on our feet?" So again, we're putting the control back into the child's hands. Although they don't technically have any control over it, they feel that they're in control of their own lives. So it's really, really very helpful to be doing strategies like that, just changing your language a small bit.
Mhm.
Language is
And
Language
sorry,
is key, yeah.
and Jeanette, you're actually running a course next Monday, the 18th of November, on this whole subject of uh, uh, PDA. Who would benefit from attending a course like this, and what kind of strategies would you be covering during the course of it?
Yeah, so like parents and teachers and special needs assistants, it would be really useful for. We do focus quite a bit on the education side of things and how to work with kids in an educational setting. So there's quite a lot covered from that side of things. So yeah, teachers and special needs assistants, and of course parents if they're interested in coming along and learning more about the PDA profile, if they maybe think that their child might have a PDA profile, then definitely come along and learn, because I think if we have parents and teachers in the same room, it actually makes for a really good learning environment because there's that collaborative approach where they can see things from each other's perspective. So it works very, very well in that way.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. Uh, Having both the parents and teachers, so it's kind of like co-production, I think they call it, or collaborative learning. Um, and
Yeah.
can conditions like this be seen in adults?
Yes, absolutely. So any neurological condition, if you're born with a neurological condition, you have it for life. There's no such thing as growing out of it. You can't grow out of autism or ADHD. Yes, you can learn to manage your signs and symptoms better for yourself. As we get older, the same with everything in life. As we get older, we might get a little bit calmer, a little bit more mellow, a little bit more able to deal with the normal stresses of everyday life. And of course, as we know, as we become adults, you are in control of your own life. So it does ease their situation an awful lot, but they don't grow out of it. They just learn better coping skills, and life is different as an adult than it is as a child.
I'm just thinking, Jeanette, with especially the stress and anxiety, it must affect them, a child or an adult emotionally. How would a parent, a teacher, or someone who might be listening with this might have the symptoms, or so what advice would you give them as a parent and a teacher to someone to help with their emotional reactions to the stress?
I think emotional reactions, it's actually a really funny, not a funny topic, but an interesting topic, I suppose, because somebody else's emotional reactions are often based on the other person's, so it depends on how we say things and what we say, then it kind of instigates an emotional reaction in somebody else. So every action we do elicits a reaction in someone else. So whether you see it when you walk down the street, if you smile at somebody, the chances are they're going to smile back. If you're moody and you bump into somebody, the chances are they're going to be cross back. So it's
The
for
mood,
us as parents and
yeah,
teachers,
the mood.
yeah, it's very important that we're very careful about how we react to behavior that we see. So if we see something that we find difficult to manage, we have to react to that in a very calm and I can't think of the word that I want to. My words are not working this evening. A very calm manner. We need to keep a very calm manner about us because if we like raise our eyebrows or tut or sigh or raise our tone, that's going to create more of a reaction in that child. So we have to be very mindful about how we react in situations when somebody else is becoming dysregulated, that we're not dysregulated ourselves.
Very stressful, for me, even listening to this, I'm going, oh my God, it must be stressful for the parents as well to get a child up and into the car to go to school or to walk to school is enough. It would be as well if you had all those demands for a child or even as an adult before you even get to school or work, the day is already began stressful.
Mhm.
And then you have
Yeah.
the rest of the day until you get into bed, and then you're probably lying there stressful about thinking about the morning.
Yes. Yeah. It's hard to imagine somebody living in that constant state of stress and anxiety. But that's exactly what's happening, and they're living with that constant state of stress and anxiety all of the time. So that fight, flight, freeze response is switched on from the minute they get out of bed. And it's no wonder that a lot of the kids who have a PDA profile or autistic or ADHD already have a heightened stress response, and it's no wonder that there's difficulties with sleep and things like that because it's all interlinked.
Yeah, yeah.
And praise must be something really important. If say you had as a mother, I'm thinking as a mother, and you have a child, and if that praise, that encouragement to help alleviate the stress in some way as well before they even get out of bed. Great job. Oh my God, that's really good. That praising and encouraging.
Yeah, and praise, it's actually interesting now you bring that up, Roisin, because praise for most kids is really great, but for somebody with a PDA profile, it's very different because the struggle is with PDA profile is that they have ambivalence, so they're not sure about how they feel about the praise. So we have a situation, so let's say, for example, the child does really well at drawing a picture. Right. And we go, oh my God, that was so fantastic. Well done. Right. So we have the normal reaction of, wow, I did a great job. I'm so happy with what I've done versus the PDA profile is, yes, wow, I've done well, but oh no, now I'm going to have to do it again. And that demand element has just hit back in big style because
Oh,
now I'm putting massive pressure on myself because I have to try and do this even better. Or what if they ask me more questions? Or what if they give me harder work? And there's that ambivalence then in them about, you know, do I want praise or don't I? So we have to be very careful around the praise. Now, yes, it is still important that we give the child praise when they do something well because we know that like we all need that. Every one of us needs that. I love praise. I'm a very needy person when it comes to praise. We absolutely love it. But we just have to be careful in how we do it. So we're not going to build it up massively and go, oh my God, that's amazing. Wow, 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 fantastic. We're just going to go, oh yeah, great job. And then move on to the next person so that we've highlighted that we know that they've done fantastically, but we're not going to build it up so it's causing more stress.
And that causes a lot of uncertainty then, doesn't it? In what, and how their expectations in themselves and the pressure on themselves and the expectations of what they think other people is expecting of them.
Yes, yeah, and it's those expectations that can cause, again, that further anxiety because they're not sure. One of my sons has a PDA profile, and when he was in school, he'd sit very quietly at the back of class and he wouldn't cause any trouble. Not at all like one of my other children, but we won't name them all because they'll get in trouble. But he would have sat in the back of the class and not said anything to anybody, and he would only answer a question if he was asked. He'd never volunteer an answer. He'd only answer what was asked, and he wouldn't answer any more. He wouldn't offer more information up. He'd just answer the question. And only if he was asked it, he wouldn't volunteer anything. And kind of that's how he kind of got through school. He just stayed very quiet. And so he was kind of missed a little bit in primary school anyway. He was missed, you know, that he was actually not doing as well as he should have because they didn't see him as a problem child because he wasn't throwing tables and chairs and he was just quiet. But it was when he got home then that we'd see the big meltdown. So he'd get very, very stressed and upset and he'd have the big meltdown at home. And we had to see it. We had to deal with it. It's a tough time for them, really tough.
Mm. Yes, it's very interesting. It's a neurological condition that I wouldn't have known a lot about, Jeanette, since I spoke to you in the last couple of weeks. So it is really interesting, really important to highlight these conditions that exist out there, and the challenges that people face when uh, face if they have these, and I suppose like everything, you build your own coping mechanism. So in your son's case, he just just answering what he was asked to ask, was probably his coping mechanism that he found over time, and that tends to
Yeah.
be the way when you have with presentations like this, be it dyslexia, ADHD, dyspraxia, you find your own ways of coping and managing
Yeah,
with things.
absolutely. So we find our own ways of just getting through school life generally, because if you have any kind of a neurological condition, the school environment wasn't made for you, and it's a really, really tough place to be. And I don't think there's enough knowledge around how hard it is for somebody who has any neurological condition being in a school environment. It's not a nice place for them.
And that must cause a lot of sensory overload and the sensory integration difficulties and social interactions as well.
Oh, huge, Roisin. Yeah, I mean, when you think about, but again, any neurological condition comes with sensory processing difficulties. So you think about how much stress they're already under and the anxiety that's there, and then add on top of that sensory processing issues. There's a lot that's going on with somebody's anxiety, and then, oh my goodness, I have to wear that uniform all day, and I hate that uniform, and it feels, the shoes are clunky, the nylon tights are irritable, or the woolly jumper is irritable. There's labels on it that I don't like, all of those things that are going on, and we're expecting kids to be able to stay calm all day. And you're like, are you serious? Like,
Yeah.
would you? You know? Like as adults, we're going into a school environment and we're able to choose our own clothes. We're able to say, do you know, I really like that jumper, but I know I couldn't wear that for 7 hours.
Mm.
Do you?
But
The
therefore,
kids
there
don't
must
have that
no.
choice.
So okay, so we start. So we got up and we got the children. The alarm. They've woken up. They've got dressed. They've had their breakfast. Put the dishes in the dishwasher. Got into the car or walked to school. So then, and we got in then where the social interaction, sensory issues, and the teachers asking them questions. So they come home from school. Then they got the other added stress of homework.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too much, isn't it?
It's a lot. It is a lot.
It's
And
too much. And like for the teachers, I would be like, to me, I don't think homework should be a thing. That's my own personal opinion. I think homework should be completely done away with. If they don't have enough time to deliver the curriculum within the school hours, then the curriculum is too much. They need to change the curriculum
yeah,
to fit in with the school hours. There's no reason they should be doing homework in the evening. Like the homework should be go out there and enjoy the nice weather or go out and play, get some fresh air, go climbing on things. Do you know, it should be just go and be a child, engage in your after school activities because there's an awful lot of learning to be done in those things.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't have to be all about academics, do you
and I have
know?
that issue too with academics in general. It's all about high achieving and being the best in the class and if you get, I have a daughter, if she got under 92, it was a disaster. high achieving and being the best in the class and putting up, being the teacher, you know, pet and oh gosh. Whereas academia, and then you've got the grinds after school where a lot of ordinary children are going to the grinds and the extra classes. And I actually had this conversation with someone the other night, and I said, "There's more to life than academia. There's more to life than high achievement, because when you become a high achiever, you're actually making yourself stress, and then you're missing out on life. You're missing out on the fun, as you said. You know, when we were young, after school, we went to the stables. We had horses. We had to go and look out straight from school down to the horses, muck out, and clean and the horses, and exercise them, bed them down, put them and feed them, and back home, shower. And I think when I was younger, we had a more ideal school life balance, but when you think then of that added pressure onto somebody who has neurodivergent, especially what we're talking about now with stress and anxiety, it's far too much for the ordinary students, never mind a child who is neurodivergent. I'm getting the language right, Janette.
I love it, Roisin. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, the stress is just it's through the roof, and we need to be doing more. Like we're talking a lot more now about mental health and how important it is for people to have a good mental health. But yet we're putting kids through this enormous amount of stress and anxiety in school. Like, why are we not tailoring the curriculum to the individual student? Like, if you have somebody who's in the gifted range and they have a neurological condition in the gifted range and they want homework, give them homework. If that's their thing to go and want to write stuff, here, go and write an essay on whatever is your favorite interest, you know, and get them to key into that. Whereas if you have somebody who's, you know, really struggling in school, why are we making them do that? Why are we adding to that stress and going, here you go, you've just had 6 hours, whatever, in school of constant stress. Go home now and do another 4 hours of it.
Yeah.
Because it's actually rubbish when they turn around and say, oh, sure, you don't have that much homework to do. When you think about 9 subjects in a day and each of them have given you a minimum of 40 minutes to do,
Yeah.
that adds up.
Well,
That's simple evening gone, you know.
And you were talking about too in another program about, you know, even in school, about going outside, growing vegetables and even flowers. I remember in one of my primary schools when I was in England, that was part of us. We had to look after a little plot each. And that was part of we had flowers we had to plant, and we had vegetables. And that is really important because and it's so relaxing too. You're getting in touch with nature, and it's science too. It is a form of science science module.
Well, you think about like the Steiner schools. The Steiner schools here are not government funded, it's all private. But the Steiner schools work with the children on what they want to learn in that day. So if you come into school and you say something about you saw a statue on the way to school, and you'd like to know more about that statue, they go and they start to discover about that statue. So you can tailor lessons based on what that child has come in telling you that they want to learn about. So they can learn all about, you know, weight and body mass index and height and what makes clay, the history of it, where did it come from, what was behind it, you know, and they just tailor the lessons accordingly. And I believe, not 100% certain on it, but I believe that the Steiner schools actually have a higher leaving cert pass rate than the regular schools do here.
And that's
just
yeah.
very interesting.
And that is true, because you know why? I know from my daughter, she learned off 21 history assignments, 21 word for word. And she was sitting here, and I was sitting on the sofa there, and she said, word for word of everything that she wrote. And I went, oh my God. The Leaving Cert, in my opinion, is all about memory.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just regurgitating information, memory, doing it for exams, and then they forget about it. Whereas so I think the educational system, even for ordinary children, never mind and there's an increased stats now that will show that there is far more children who are neurodivergent.
Yes, yeah. We're looking at 1 in 4 people who have a neurodivergent condition. Only 14% of children who have higher support needs are in special education, which means that the other 86% of our autistic and otherwise neurodivergent kids are in mainstream education. But yet we're not catering for them. We're not doing anything for them. And the teachers, unless they specialize in special educational needs, they're not being trained in their 4-year teaching degree about neurological conditions and how to tailor their lessons that's to their advantage rather than going against them.
We're talking about the issues here. Is there anybody listening to what needs to be changed at least within the educational system? Is the Department of Education listening and really listening and hearing and putting into action and practice different training practices and teaching practices that will accommodate children who are neurodivergent?
Not so far, as I know. I don't think so. I know that Simon Harris has put a program in place for those going into apprenticeships and into third level education. There's some kind of program there for people who are not doing so well in the Leaving Cert or looking to leave school early. So there is something in place for them, but as far as I know, there's nothing there for the younger generation, the younger children, preschool, primary school, and post second level education. I don't think so.
So there's a lot of onus put on the parents to just solve and just live with it and get on with it. And I would imagine there's a lot of SNAs who are there and coming to you for training and information but it seems to be like, okay, here's what it is, here's the issues, and now then, but the children are still in the like a no man's land and trying to deal and with what is going on. And that's what I'm hearing. I'm just trying to think, if I was a child, if I had a child, wow, like it's like the parents are on their own.
Yeah. I think one of the hardest things as well at the moment for parents is when their child has been they're going through an assessment for whatever they need an assessment for. So they're going through an assessment of need, and maybe they're put on the waiting list for CAMS, and maybe they're put on the waiting list for speech and language and occupational therapy and all of those things. And in the meantime, the TUSLA are putting them on a parenting program and sending them off to learn about speech and language and occupational therapy, and you're like, hang on a minute, we're already doing enough as parents that you're basically telling us in a roundabout way that we're rubbish at what we're doing and we need more training in how to do it, but they're trying to get us to do everybody else's job. You're like, we're not all trained speech and language therapists. Like, we understand if a speech and language therapist has been engaged with a child and they're given a program and we have to carry that program forward, that's all well and good, but we shouldn't be doing all of the stuff for everybody. Like, it's not fair on parents. And it's too much. I mean, being told you have to go on a parenting program because your child is autistic is not helpful.
No. And I can understand the speech and language part because I went to speech therapy for 25 years. 25 years. And that was really challenging even for me because I had a speech impediment. And then when I was in my early 20s, I had my palate lifted again to help my speech. And my mother would not have been able to cope with all that. Yes, she paid privately when I was younger, for speech therapy. But even at that, speech therapy for parents and being able to get their children to speak properly, be able to speak where they are understood, and that frustration for a child who is neurodivergent, there must be a lot of more anxiety that, oh my God, nobody knows what I'm saying, I'm repeating myself, and that self-isolation then.
Yeah. And it again feeds all back into the mental health. You know, we have that heightened anxiety, that stress, that frustration. People aren't like, to me, I think that if a child is struggling to communicate something, then we need to listen better.
Yeah.
We need to listen better. That's what we need to do because there's more than just words that is communication, and people forget that. Their actions, their facial expressions, they're telling you something. Listen better.
Yeah.
Because when we can listen, and if words isn't working for them, why are we not helping them with communication devices? A communication devices should be freely available to children throughout the education system. You shouldn't have to apply for them and beg for them. They should be there. If speech and language therapist says that you need it, or a parent says that they need it, it should just be given to them. It shouldn't have to be jumping through hoops in order to get this device. You know, it's their voice. Their behavior is their voice. So we have to listen to that.
Yeah.
You know, it shouldn't be about us. Oh no, I can't understand you. It's not about us. It's about us listening more.
I like that what you said. Their behavior is their behavior, their voice. Did I hear? Yeah, their behavior. That's
Yeah.
really important. Their behavior is their voice. Can you tell us about the communication tools?
Yeah, there's lots of communication tools out there. So the likes of the speech to text, text to speech software that you can get. So those things you can get. Actually, Microsoft Word has a dictaphone on it, so you can actually talk to Microsoft Word and it types for you. So there's things like that. There's the likes of the Live Scribe. So the Live Scribe is like a smart pen. So it records what somebody is saying. So whilst you're writing notes, or if you're trying to write notes, it's recording it. And if you can't keep up, you can just come back to that. You put the pen onto the note where you left it off, and it plays back from where it left it. Very, very intuitive piece of software. So really, really helpful for anybody with ADHD or dyslexia, people who are, not fast enough, I suppose, at keeping up with the notes and things like that. And if you're going to forget things, like I would forget things quite quickly. So getting things recorded back that I can listen to is really helpful. There's the C reader. So the C reader just reads the page. So as you're going across the page, it reads the page out for you. It's like another like pen, but it doesn't record anything. It just reads for you. So there's things like that that you can get, things that you can get on tablets. There's lots of apps. There's lots of very cool apps that you can get, like the Prologue to Go is one it's a little bit like it's visuals. So you put the visuals on it yourself of what that person uses. So if they use kind of clip art pictures or if they use real life pictures, one lady I used to work with used to have pictures of herself in the image before it would
Oh,
make sense to her. So it was very cool. So we'd have lots of pictures of her and she'd just point to what she wanted, which is a very good communication tool. So there's lots of apps like that can help with speech and language as well. You know, there's a Gracie app is one that helps with speech and language. It repeats everything. So when you press the picture, it repeats what it is. So if they say I want ice cream, it speaks it out, I want ice cream as they press the buttons. So it helps with that. Those are a
that's very
few. For things like that. For the likes of ADHD, there's a lot of things. Focus at Will is very good on software for adults, and for teenagers. It cuts off everything and makes you focus on the task at hand, and things like time blocking. Time blocking can be very useful for people
What's
with
time
ADHD.
blocking?
Time blocking. So you block out time on your calendar and you color code everything. So things like, for example, things that are movable, you would put them in green, and things that you absolutely have to do. So it's like a priority rating.
Mm.
Things you absolutely have to do then goes in red. So you can't move that off your calendar. You have to do it. And you just kind of block out time. So like I would block out from 8:30 to 10:30 for emails, answering emails, things like that. And then from 10:30 till, 12:30, whatever, I would do, working on courses or um editing, whatever the case may be. So I time block
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Okay. Protective time, some people might call it as well.
Yeah,
And
yeah, exactly.
Jeanette, your course on PDA, if there's any of our viewers out here that would be very interested in taking part, how can they do so?
Yeah, so they can go onto our website. It's academy.tskcourses.com. And that is on Monday evening from 6:30 to 9:30. Or they can go onto our main page, tskacademy.com, and they can just click on Academy there, and that will bring them straight to it.
And as as I imagine, it's online, it's recorded. So if you don't get the opportunity to take part in the course, you can probably go back and you can look at it and hear
Yeah,
all the content,
absolutely. It's
different
recorded,
speakers.
so you can watch back. You do have to register for it in order to get the recording, but yeah, it is recorded.
Brilliant, brilliant.
We just don't. I'm really just sort of overwhelmed at the fact that there's children, so many children, 1 in 4 who are
Mm.
neurodivergent. 1 in 4 children have this anxiety and living in this stress for life of, and it makes you, and I suppose, Paul, we between the two of us on the radios, we became
Mm.
really all interested in this. But
Yeah,
even more so, we spoke to Adam Harris from As I Am at the very beginning of the launch of Irish Political Roundup.
yeah, and it's nearly 2 years ago. Yeah,
Yeah. And I'm really just thinking, how many children when we're going to school or if we're driving past the school have these anxieties and stresses? And even if you go to the gym, how many children there, if they're going for swimming lessons or anything? And we just don't, and the parents then, the
yeah,
stress of parents who are there, and probably the isolation that the parents are living in as well.
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah, it's a lot for parents too, yeah, when we think about it, because we think we're on our own. We don't think other people are going through the same thing, and there is so many people going through the same thing. But we don't think about that, and we don't think anybody wants to hear. We don't think people want to, listen to our worries and our stresses. Um, so we keep it all in, we hide it all in, and it's not a healthy thing to do, absolutely not a healthy thing to do at all. But it is a lot of stress on them, and of course neurodivergent conditions, they are genetic, so the chances are that if your child has a neurological condition, there's a fairly high chance that you also have a neurological condition as the parents, and you might be completely unaware of it, you know.
yeah,
So there's that anxiety there, and there's lots of parents that I have worked with who have massive anxieties, and they've no idea why they're so anxious all of the time, and I can't turn around and go, well, I think actually you might be neurodivergent. It's not my place to do that, but it's it's definitely it's out there, and we need to pay more attention to that as the general population. We need to pay more attention to that.
definitely, definitely. When it comes to these whole neurological or neurodivergent condition, the whole mental health piece, I think, is seems to be totally, I wouldn't say forgotten about, but it's just something that probably we're not fully kind of aware of, because when you're neurodivergent, your brain has to work that little bit harder to do what ordinary things, and that can create challenges as well. So I think the whole mental health and wellness piece is something that we really need to get out there for people with who will be classed as neurodivergent, sorry.
I think
You're
self-care,
doing great, Paul.
the self-care. So if a child was listening to this, hypothetically, which they wouldn't be, but if a child was listening to this, what tips would you give to children? And they'll come to adults in a minute, but children, what self-care tips could anyone, a parent listening to you, give to their children to help with their self-care, which will help with their mental and emotional and physical health too?
I would say for them to be kind to themselves. We're very hard on ourselves, and especially as kids, because we're constantly comparing ourselves to our peers. So it's to try and stop comparing themselves. Obviously, but not that's not so easy when you might be an overthinker, or I much prefer the term to think a lot. You might think a lot. I think it sounds nicer than an overthinker. But like it's to be kind to themselves, really to be kind to themselves. We're all different, we're all unique, and that's what makes the world go around. We need kids like you. We need kids like you who are unique. So be kind to yourself.
And in that, be kind to yourself. Would you say that would be through their self-talk? Would that be through their their emotional reactions to the self-talk as well, and beating themselves up, oh, I'm no good, and even changing their tone of voice in their self-talk
Hmm.
is very,
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
powerful.
We need positive self-talk and going out and doing something that's just for you, something that they enjoy doing. So, like if it's going out for a walk, if that's what they like, or they like going to the cinema, to make sure that they are doing something for themselves. Cherish their hobby,
Mm.
because kids who have, well, all kids have an interest in something.
Yeah.
And somebody who has a neurological condition, that interest is going to be a little bit more special to them. So, cherish what that is and engage in it because it's something that they absolutely love to do. So,
And be active, be active,
well, be active, definitely be active. Yeah.
and
Yeah. That's
and find that hobby and find the strengths we talked about before, but finding the strengths, finding what you're good at and excel in
Hmm.
them good and your strengths and just manage the
Yes.
weaknesses. Like,
mm,
and that's going to be important. And two is that be kind to yourself is also acknowledging to yourself what you are good at and
mm.
laughing
Yeah.
and having fun.
We all have strengths and
Yes.
weaknesses.
Yes, we do. We do.
We all have anxiety, and as you were talking about the anxiety of children, I was thinking, gosh, we think our we think our anxiety that is bad, but of a child who has these neurodivergent uh issues or what they're living with, their stresses are probably 100 times more than what we have.
I think that we can all feel anxious a little bit sometimes, but I don't think we all have anxiety.
No.
Anxiety is like you have that small anxious feeling from now and again, like if you were starting a new job or if you were nervous about saying something to somebody, it's more nerves. Do you know, it's those little knots in your stomach, and you might get those physical manifestations of it. Maybe you feel a little bit nauseous, or your stomach cramps, or a little bit of a headache. Do you know? But they pass. They pass. If you actually have like an anxiety disorder, that's like that confounded, as you rightly said, Roisin, it's like 100 times worse. You imagine having those knots in your stomach all of the time and wanting to physically throw up all of the time. Do you know? And that's really what we're dealing with is somebody who they can't physically, their brain just can't cope with it because it's just too much. Do you know? And those physical manifestations do come out. in those kids. Yeah, and this is where we're seeing, and I really don't like the term school refusal, but this is where we're seeing a lot of children who are really struggling to go to school because that anxiety is built up so much that they can't physically bring themselves to go. And we're just seeing them as bad kids, and it's not the right way to be looking at it at all.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting point. And probably from my own point of view, I'm in my late 30s, but I'm only kind of really starting now to be kind of more conscious of, if I do feel anxious, okay, what do I need to do? I need to, okay, take a breath, just slow down a bit, write it down, things like that. It's kind of, when you're younger, you don't really you just this whole ball of anxiety, and you're not kind of sure how to deal with it. But definitely, I think from my own point of view anyway, I think as I've got older, I can only speak for myself. Other people will probably come at it a whole different angle. Um, but being able to identify when you know you're stressed or when you know you're anxious is half the battle.
And
Oh
maybe
yeah,
even
yeah, absolutely.
reactions, and even understand your reactions to the stressful moments and the anxiety, and having
Mm,
a self-care
mm.
sort of plan and strategy. Would you recommend that, knowing, if a teenager or somebody in the late 30s is probably understanding the the reactions and behaviors when you're stressed, and then an action plan, what to do when you feel anxious, that anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that takes an enormous amount of self-awareness.
Yeah.
And of course, if there is sensory processing difficulties, sometimes they're not always aware.
Mm,
They know that
Yeah,
there's a feeling, but they're not aware exactly what that feeling is.
mm,
So that can be very difficult as well, being able to identify those. So it's something that we have to actually help to teach our young people to be able to identify what those feelings are, and why they're getting them. Why are they having those feelings, and what are they? And then we can help them with the strategies to help them manage those themselves. Like, it's a huge piece of self-awareness that needs to be there for a lot of the kids. Some kids are already, hyper aware, like they'd be hyper aware of their own feelings, and those kids would literally be able to teach somebody else how to do it,
yeah.
because they'd be very aware of their own thoughts and feelings and how things are within their own body. But not everybody has that skill, so it's about teaching that.
And then,
mm,
Jeanette, so if a child is in constant anxiety, and then they would have the behaviors, they would have as you said, called meltdowns, then they would have the emotional reactions. Surely this must affect their physical health as well.
Oh,
fine.
absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. And like there's so much research out there about trauma and adverse childhood experiences and the anxiety and the stress. And kids who have neurological conditions are at greater risk of experiencing trauma and adverse childhood experiences. Much greater risk than a neurotypical child would be. And with that involved, like, we already have a heightened stress response in these kids. Like, without anything else, we already have a heightened stress response. And we know pretty much for a fact through all of the research that that heightened stress response, that increases in your blood pressure, that increases in your heart rate, increases your cortisol, your stress hormone, that makes a massive impact then on your body and your brain. So, like, that wear and tear of your body and brain is just going to be faster. So this is why we see a lot of people my age, maybe younger, maybe a little bit older. We're not going to tell you how old I am. I only had my birthday on Monday.
Your birthday the other day, so
Um,
happy belated birthday.
I know, I know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
but like people like myself, like I got diagnosed early onset osteoarthritis in my early 30s. And to me, that would be something, oh, that's an old person's thing, you know, that's what I would have assumed back then. But what we don't think about is the neurological condition, because I'm late diagnosed ADHD. So I already had a heightened stress response. I've been through a lot of adversity through my life, which we definitely won't talk about today because we'll need several hours and a really good therapy session. But you know, there's lots of that stuff is stacked up against me, which has caused that excess wear and tear on my body and brain over the years, you know. And only now, since I've started to understand much more about myself, am I in a better place mentally? So my mental and emotional health is better now than it ever was. And so my body is starting to repair itself. You know, it's starting to do better. And hopefully, they had said I'd need a hip operation before I was 50, and there's no sign of that even happening. And I'm a year off it. I'm a year off it. So so we're doing okay, do you know?
Yeah, it's the more and more I'm speaking to you and talking to you, and I know, Paul, you're the same. It's like
Mhm.
it's
Absolutely, yeah,
not
it's
really,
eye-opening.
yeah. And to know that there's so many children, 1 in 4. Who would have
Mm.
thought there was 1 in 4 children living with this anxiety, or who are like neurodivergent?
Yeah, and that's if they have an official diagnosis,
Mm.
and you know yourself, Jeanette,
Expensive.
it's very expensive if you have to go privately, but
Yes.
without that diagnosis, there's a lot, you know, a lot of things you can't, it's very difficult to access. So there's lots of children going out there undiagnosed who are, going through all this, and they haven't even they're not getting the access to the help that they need.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. This the proper struggling.
and Jeanette, what other courses do you provide for teachers, for educators, and for parents, and even for children?
Yeah, we have a couple of accredited courses. So I do trauma informed practice. I have one on autism sensory processing. Um, we do obviously the shorter workshops then, so like the PDA, dyslexia, dyspraxia, pica. Pica's an interesting one. It's a feeding eating disorder. Um, they eat inedible objects. It's very interesting topic. Yeah, and I see the face, Roisin. Yeah, they do. Yeah, eat inedible objects. So there's all kinds of things to do with different neurological conditions, and then um myself and yourself are going to be working on one then for the teenagers there come the new year. So that's going to be a self-development
Fourteen, that.
program for young people and teenagers. So I'm super excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course we have our conference coming up, which is also CPD accredited in March of next year, 22nd and 23rd.
And what we've been doing since we last spoke to you is we've been putting the advertisements for your conference at the end of every video. But what we'll also do is we'll start putting it on the beginning of the videos as well. I think that's going to be very important, putting it at the beginning and the end. So we've been doing that, and we will continue to do that, Jeanette, and promote this and it's your conference. Your conference, just remind our viewers about your conference.
Yes, so the conference is on the 22nd and 23rd of March 2025, and it's called Neurodiversity in Education Conference. So it's the only one in Ireland. It's a national conference, and it looks at all different neurological conditions. The theme next year is going to be the trauma connection. So we're looking at how trauma intersects with neurodivergence. So that's going to be super interesting. So over the 2 days, day one, we're going to focus our talks on age ranges 0 to 12. And on day two, on the Sunday, we're going to focus our attention on ages 13 to adult. So it's going to be very interesting. We do actually have Senator Tom Clonan coming on the Sunday to do a talk for us, which is going to be exciting. And we have a number of other speakers as well, which people can go on then to events www.tskacademy.com, and they can get tickets and see the speakers and workshops that's going to be there on the day.
Roisin will provide a link to that in the description as well.
We definitely will. And
Thank you.
I just think it's amazing what you're doing, Jeanette. I really do think, I think what you do has so much purpose and brings so much value to so many children, adults, and families, not just here in Ireland, but internationally as well. And, you know, when I talk to you and you tell me what you do, I do get choked up. So I think that is such a healing profession that you're doing. You're healing people's lives. You're healing their minds. You're healing their hearts. You're healing their bodies. You're healing family lives. And you're changing people's lives.
You make me cry now, Roisin. Don't be doing that to me.
Okay.
I'm on the telly. Don't do it to me.
But no, and I just think, you know, it's so lovely to know you, and it's lovely that we know that we can promote who you are and what you're doing here on the Irish Political Roundup, because so many families need you.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I
It's
second
very,
everything.
very much appreciated. Really is.
do you know?
Sorry, Paul.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Second everything Roisin says there.
Paul, but I know you do, Paul, and it's to Jeanette. So just remind our viewers about the course that's starting on Monday.
So the course is on pathological demand avoidance, and it's on Monday. It's online, so you don't even have to come out of your pajamas, from 6:30 to 9:30 in the evening. And it's yeah, it's going to be recorded. So come along. It's live, it's interactive, and you have me there to talk to and ask me loads of questions, which I'm happy to answer.
Well, Jeanette Delahunty, it's always an absolute pleasure having you on with us. And we'll have you on again in a couple of weeks' time. Remind me again of I'm trying to get the terminology and the language. The eating disorder. What's that called again?
Pica.
Pica. We must talk
Pica.
about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, pica. But that's something I've
We
never
could
heard
be
of.
talking all night long, Roisin.
I was sure we can talk.
Right, absolutely.
It's good to talk. Jeanette Delahunty, Neurodiversity Consultant and Trainer with the Task Academy. Thank you so much indeed for taking the time to come on and speak to the Irish Political Roundup tonight with Paul and myself.